finish the stream. Okay, so the thing is that we need to, oh, hello, finally, yeah, I'm here. So I was talking about the 6 skills with 2 extra skills: viewing, being able to interpret visual information, and reproducing, which is basically being able to produce visual information, let's say infographics, videos, and so on. Okay, so that was the first thing. Second thing is inquiry-based learning. So inquiry-based learning is basically the type of learning where the teacher is not a presenter. The teacher is just a facilitator, and you might have seen it in project-based learning or task-based learning. So the teacher creates optimal conditions for the students to learn something. Probably if the students are emotionally and cognitively involved, they will learn better, that's for sure. But we do understand that this inquiry-based learning demands extra skills to be taught. Sometimes students do not want to learn something on their own because they are taught to the domination of the teacher. So basically another thing to introduce into our classroom, inquiry-based learning. So you have a problem which you want your students to get acquainted with. So you introduce this problem into the class, and students start looking at this problem from different sides. They think about the strategies, how they can solve this problem. They think about the evidence that they need to find. They start collecting the evidence, and then they come up with their results. But eventually this is not the end, because at the end they will think about something which is a little bit like extra linguistics. So they are trying to solve the problem, and after that they are trying to reflect on the ways they have used to solve this problem. So this is one of them. So another thing, post method condition. Before that, like many years ago, it was grammar translation approach, when people translated a lot, read a lot, gap fills, whatever. But right now, people are not into another extreme of that, which is communicative methodology. And communicative methodology is not a panacea as far as we understand. Because in grammar translation, they say you need rules, you need to learn, you need to memorize, and so on. In communicative approach, they tend to say that try to speak even if you don't know how. Of course, we understand that this is the anxiety of the learners, and different learners prefer different methods. So the thing is that you use a so-called eclectic approach, which is about knowing a number of methodologies where you would like to integrate different things from these methodologies. There is nothing bad about grammar translation. Absolutely. If you want to integrate a couple of exercises or a couple of tasks which involve translation in your classroom, that's cool, that's fine. Even when we are talking about lexical approach, yes, which is promoted by Hugh Deller, yes, and Leo Sullivan at the moment, they actually have some certain tasks based on translation, where learners can benefit from translation. But we will talk about it a little bit later. So the trend is use all the approaches you know. If you want to use audiolingualism, take it. If you want to use a direct method, take it. Nothing is excluded, but you can use all these things only if you can make an informed decision about their learning, about the learners, about what they will benefit from, not what you think they will benefit from. Okay, so the next thing. A lot of guys are talking about teaching young learners, which is really challenging. When I took my IHCYLT, International House Certificate in Teaching Young Learners, yeah, I was actually a little bit depressed because, this is a really different approach to teaching. This is the thing, this is the approach where you need to think about everything, how they will move, how they will sit. Every minute should be timed, yeah, every minute should be thought about, every small detail. For people like me who are thinking about general things, this is actually a little bit strange. Yeah, hi, the people who have joined recently. Okay, but today I'm not talking about young learners. The new trend is older or elderly learners. And this is another idea, because language is something that people understand they need to learn, and older learners are not an exception. Anyway, of course, there are certain ideas which are behind teaching older learners. For example, you need to think about speaking clearly, and you need to think about adjusting the volume, especially when it comes to listening, because most of them used to be educated differently. probably with the use of a little bit of grammar translation approach, with the listening or source of listening, or probably the only source of listening being their teacher and their peers. And if you start teaching these elderly people with communicative methodology or with lexical approach or with any other kind of innovation approach or probably inquiry-based learning, of course, they will be a little bit depressed. So the thing is, you need to clearly understand the priorities in teaching older learners. You need to think even about the print, which should be bigger, which should be more understandable for them. You need to understand how they are sitting, if they are sitting closer to the board, if they are comfortable, if they have enough movement. This is also important. If they are encouraged to use their cognitive skills and enormous life experience, which they will greatly benefit from. And think about testing. When you are testing older learners, why are you testing them? How you can do it in a friendlier way. So these are the things to talk about and to think about. Well, the next one is disruptive innovation, and you might have heard about that because we usually, what comes to our mind? Yes, the first thing which occurs to us when we think about disruptive innovation is the internet. Because internet promoted a number of services which used to be paid for free now. And the thing is that the idea is about, I'm trying to read like some of your questions. So the idea is that disruptive innovation nowadays is a very difficult matter to think about for teachers who are private or like self-employed. Because we see a great variety of prices, a huge price range in terms of people giving their lessons just for free, almost for free, for nothing, and people who basically know how to evaluate their expertise and they want to get a higher price for this thing. And the internet, with all these free platforms, with all these resources, has actually enabled learners to get a lot of things for free. This is a little bit distressing for the teachers, and teachers should think about how to do about these things. So these are the topics which are being raised at the conferences. How we can minimize the distress of the teachers who want to not like make their living by teaching and have enough means to go to different kinds of, to go a little bit of background, to different kind of conferences, and who want to spend their time not only inside their country, but to widen their horizons. So guys, you're not alone. Everybody is thinking about how to solve the problem of teaching being underpaid. Okay, the next thing is embodied learning. And this is the type of learning in which basically people are thinking about at the moment, because embodied learning is currently being used in drama classes. And according to the research, this type of learning increases students' motivation and retention of material. Let's say you're reading a book with your young learners. Of course, reading with young learners is supposed to be interactive. So basically, you sit together, you ask them questions, and they respond. You ask them to predict what will happen next, so on and so forth. But what if you ask learners to act it out? So basically, instead of some comprehension questions, I'm so sorry for that, but I think it's some kind of drilling happening there. So like teaching anyway. So another thing is, what if learners try to think about some kind of embodiment of their experience? Let's say, instead of comprehension questions, which you give to your students, like who was the main character of the story? Why was he unhappy? Why was he happy? What happened to him after the fox came? Blah, blah, blah. What if we ask them to cut out, let's say, some shapes of humans or like main characters from the paper, and while you tell them the story, they interact with these shapes? This is one of the alternatives, right? Of course, you can use different kinds of puppets, you can use like fingers, you can use even students to do that. It depends on what they like to do in the classroom, right? Because they shouldn't feel anxiety. And embodied learning proved to be a very effective method, because if you ask these learners to repeat or to retell what happened in the story after that, the improvement ratio is about 30%. So basically, the next time you want to read something to your learners, let's say a story, a fictional story, get them to interact with this story. Cut out some shapes from paper, then move them, then have some fun, whatever, and experiment. I wouldn't say that it works for everyone, because I've tried this type of action research with a number of my colleagues, but it was quite effective at that moment. All right, the next thing would be from perception to interaction, and we are not only reading texts now. We are not only perceiving information. We want to interact with the information. While you're listening to me, you want to grade my performance. You will say, oh my God, why did I come here? Or you are sending some signs to me like thumbs up or like a heart, whatever. So this is the type of interacting. You want to ask me some questions. I will see your questions and I will respond. And this is perfect. So why are we asking our learners to interact with the text by only answering the questions, the comprehension questions? Because if we go online, if we go to the internet and we will look at the texts there, this is a different thing happening with the text over there. You are looking at the website, and the website has some kind of the layout. It has the structure, and it's you who has the control of what you start from and what you finish with. So you can choose from the menu. You can pick up the point which you want. And this sense of control is very important in learning. Why don't you give the same opportunity to your students? Why do we still read those long, boring texts in class? So give your learners a choice. And I think that this type of interaction and control is really important for those people who are who use, for example, platforms, who use online learning, because they can choose, because they don't go one step at a time. Yes, they can start from number 1, then they can go to number 10, and then they can come back, which gives them the sense of control, the control of their learning. The next thing is about rules and reasons. In grammar translation times, we used to think about rules, that rules are important, we learn the rules, and actually even now we are teaching the rules. But we are starting to realize that rules are not the only thing which is happening. Another thing is reason, working out the rules from real examples. Currently, lexical approach is giving us this opportunity, but recently I have been to a wonderful conference presentation by John Hurd from Oxford University, and John Hurd was presenting communicative grammar. Yes, Oxford is thinking about communicative grammar. So been thinking is actually a very good example of what is happening in the grammar today. People understand that I have been walking will soon maybe not disappear, but will be not that common figure of speech as it is now. So basically, what I suggest is think about not only rules or regulations, but think about real life and possible language in the world. Corpus linguistics, let's say SCAL and other types like BYU corpus and British corpus, they're giving you a number of opportunities to interact with the real language. For non-native speakers, it's a really good way to help their learners, because sometimes we don't know how to say it right. And if we rely on the rules only, our language will be highly improbable. If we look at the dissertations from, let's say, 30 years ago, yes, from translation from Russian into English, we will be really surprised. Yes, native speakers will understand that, but they will laugh a lot. So use corpus linguistics, use communicative grammar, think about real language, not only something you think is probable because of the rules. And another thing which is connected with that is English as lingua franca, or ELF, as we call it now. And again, in Barcelona, this idea was exploited a lot. And it's really important to note that English as lingua franca is basically now the acceptable variation of different kinds of variants of English, of different types of pronunciation. So British or American English is not the received pronunciation anymore. It's not something you have to stick to. Anyway, even my pronunciation, which has a lot of flaws, but which is intelligible to the people around, might be acceptable if people understand me, if it is intelligible, right? So the thing is that we as non-native speakers, like teachers, basically can benefit from English as lingua franca because we need to look at the priorities of us as being non-native speakers. First of all, lingua franca is spoken all over the world, basically. When you travel to Europe, you don't speak British English. You don't speak American English. You speak English as lingua franca. Yes, this is a somewhat simplified way. It's a little bit unusual pronunciation, but these are the conventions which people need and understand. So why don't you just revisit and rethink all the messages which are related with teaching English, because non-native speaker teachers can benefit greatly from teaching English as lingua franca. And in the last conference in Barcelona, there was Marek, who actually gave a wonderful presentation of English as lingua franca. You can find even his book, which is called in the same way, and you will find a lot of interesting insights about this phenomenon and about teaching this phenomenon. So that is the thing. And the next thing, which is related to the same idea, is native speakerism. A lot of teachers, non-native speakers, are really anxious about what is happening in the teaching world. In the world of presenters, that for the conferences, the people who are attending the conferences, the people who are teaching English are supposed to be native speakers. And native speakers basically get higher credit, they get higher salary and all other things. You know, at the conferences, this problem has been arising again and again and again. And this is a good sign because people are not only talking about that. They are proposing real solutions. They are proposing real ways. And if you want to apply for a conference in the USA or in the UK for the ITEFL conference, whatever, you will be able to do it. Because now there is the tendency to accept all types of proposals, because that will encourage or ensure the balance between the speakers and non-native speakers. Non-native speakers have a lot of benefits, you know, because we have gone through all these way of learning and self-teaching. And also we know sometimes non-native speakers have higher qualifications compared to some native speakers. And of course, another thing, so we understand that. We have higher empathy for that. But at the same time, oh yeah, about lingua franca, I will send the book a little bit later. I will write it in the comments, okay? So this is because now I will need to Google for that, yeah? So just a little bit later, okay? So actually you can find it like teaching English as lingua franca. Just a moment, let me, English, yeah. Okay, just like this. All right. So, a very useful book. So, the problem of native speakerism is also raised at the conferences, which is good. And I think that might drive you to understanding the thing that if you want to present at the international conference, nothing can stop you from that. By the way, at one of the previous international conferences, I've heard a very interesting story. My native language is Russian and Ukrainian because I come from the bilingual surroundings. So not English definitely, but I think we can hear that. Probably lingua franca. Okay, whatever. So my contention is if you want to apply for the conference, for the international presentation at the international conference, just go for it. If you have something to say, forget about your insecurities. Just go and try it. You see that my stream is not an ideal one. I haven't been preparing for that. I haven't been writing the speech because I don't think it is necessary. I want to show you that everything is possible. If you have something to say, share. Don't keep it to yourself. You have no actually right to do this. Right. Another thing is, which many people have been speculating about, is the use of their first language. In communicative methodology, the use of first language is basically not prohibited, but not encouraged. However, recently I've been looking at Cambridge, trying to drive off this practice and trying to realize and actually implementing some interesting things connected with L1. The thing is that nowadays it's a very good point, a very good trend coming up. You can use your first language in the classroom freely if it benefits your learners. If you want to show the structures which could be parallel in both languages, if you want to differentiate between false friends, if you want to give the explanation which is clearer to, let's say, maybe older learners who got used to this way of teaching, or maybe which is clearer to maybe lower levels of instruction, whatever. So the thing is, try to use your literacy. The more languages you know, the easier it is for you to teach. Currently, I've been thinking about taking a PhD course in another country, in the Czech Republic, and I understand that I will be teaching there. I will be teaching in the Czech community there as well. So the primary thing, like my priority, is to find out the peculiarities of the Czech language, because I want to know what my learners may have a problem with. I understand that Czech and Russian are close because they're Slavic languages, but this could be an overgeneralization, right? So I want to learn the language, not only for my own use, but also for the benefit of my learners. I also speak Japanese. I'm a teacher of Japanese, and I actually, when I work with this type of audience, I also try to implement that into my teaching. How long have you been learning English? I don't know. It seems to me all my life. Yeah, I'm 30. How old am I? 35 or 36? I've already forgotten. So I've been learning English from the age of 5, I think. Yeah, I don't know if it has been very successful, but I've been dealing with English all my life. So that is my thing. Okay, so next. Guys, feel free to create materials. If you want to share something with the people, there are a lot of online platforms. Busy Teacher, IHCYLT Collective, and others, and Teachers Pay Teachers, where you will be actually paid for the use of your materials. Don't hesitate to share the materials. At one of the conferences in Poland, if I'm not mistaken, there was Catherine Bilsborough. And Catherine Bilsborough is a very famous, really famous, very popular material creator. And she encourages everyone to think about creating their own materials. Of course, think about the copyright, but share. Don't forget to share. If you want to get the money for that, share at the paid publics. If you want to share for free, anyway, someone may find your materials useful. So just go online, Google for different kinds of material like databases, and go there. Why not? Who knows? Maybe you will be the next Hugh Deller. Okay, and finally, again, my final point. If you want to present at conferences, go for it. Don't wait until your English becomes perfect. Don't wait until your face becomes perfect, until you get wise, until you get older, until you get more experienced. It will never come about. It will never happen. Never, ever. Even the greatest presenters at the conferences still have these insecurities. Yes, they sound great, they look great, and everything looks fine. But if you have something to say, you just don't have the right to keep it to yourself. Go and share. Go to the international conference. You know that some conferences you can even attend for free. ITEFL, they have a lot of scholarships for the first-time speakers as well, and different kinds of conferences give their speakers the opportunity to work for to speak for no extra payment. Actually, my contention is if you are sharing something that you own, your intellectual property, you are supposed to be paid for that. That's why sometimes when I am invited to some kinds of conferences, I'm taking a rational perspective. So this is my private property. This is my intellectual property. If I am willing to go there and present for this money, and if I am willing to pay for that. Always read the abstracts, always read what the conference is about, but always come there and always present. So guys, I hope it was useful, and I hope you have got some tips and some ideas on how to go about modern trends and what is happening in ELT right now. Do you have any questions? Probably you would like to ask me some questions. Thank you, Lena. Thank you, everybody. Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you all for attending. So basically, under this post later, when it appears, you can ask your own questions. Probably now you cannot come up with everything, which was quite chaotic, I think. Yeah. So because it was my first stream with Skyeng, and it's like, okay, but it was a great experience. So thank you for that. And I'm really sure that our teachers, non-native speakers, will basically show that we are not like the second sort or something like that. I'm not thinking about that, but many people do think about that. Don't think about that. Just go for that. Keep on teaching, get useful insights, and share. Thank you very much, people. So see you next time. Goodbye.
Mm-hmm.